You hear that? That's the awkward silence of a family dinner after you just got caught vaping. Most vapes contain high levels of nicotine and disappointment. Brought to you by The Real Cost and the FDA.
This podcast is part of the Robots Radio Rocket Club, a program designed to help all podcasts reach their full potential. For information about joining the Robots Radio Rocket Club, check out robotsradio.net.
Hey all you heroes and champions, crows, pirates, and inquisitors. Welcome to the Dragon Age Lorecast. I'm Shelby.
And I'm Austin.
And we are so excited to bring you this podcast. Every episode, we'll be talking about a different topic in the Dragon Age universe. From the Maker to Lyrium to Aravels, we will cover it all. There will be spoilers. And always remember, swooping is bad.
Hello and welcome to the Dragon Age Lorecast. I am Austin, also known as Teacup, your co-host for this podcast. And I'm here with my other host.
Yeah, I'm Shelby or Shecup, and I'm one of the co-hosts, and I'm also the lore master on this show.
Yes, she knows much more than me. Well, Shelby, we have a very special episode to give today. This episode is our first ever patron episode, and so we have with us one of our patrons, our First Enchanter tier patron, Derek B. Hey, Derek, how's it going?
Hi, guys.
Yeah, we're so happy you can be here.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. This is a great treat.
And so, as we do with all of our guests, we're just going to ask a couple questions. We're going to talk about Dragon Age and just really get excited about that. And so the first question is obvious, like, what got you into Dragon Age? How did you get involved in this franchise fandom? And what keeps you coming back and playing the games over and over again?
I was first introduced to BioWare games years ago when I played Mass Effect 3, and I thought it was a huge chance. It was a huge change from the linear RPGs I've played in the past, like Final Fantasy games. And, you know, with choices, interactions that really mattered, really came to, you know, I really found that they were really meant something, or really what I did really changed. It was really something different in the first game. So when I first discovered Dragon Age was actually from a friend of mine I was working with a long time ago, and he told me about this game, and you got to try this game, Dragon Age, and he didn't really tell me which one, so I chose the latest one. It was DAI, and so, you know, I got slaughtered in the hinterlands and didn't know what I didn't know what I was doing. But after a while, I actually defeated the game, went through the entire game without any DLCs, excuse me. And I continued on, and I kind of discovered Origins a little later on, and then of course DA2, and I, you know, through all that playing, I really found that the lore and the, you know, especially about the Andrastian religion and everything made sense. All the parallels, the history, and kind of tied around like my own kind of fascination with our world, and how, you know, BioWare is sort of pulling parallels between our world and into putting them into their games. And it just was it was interesting to play this. And then of course I just discovered the DLCs and then the DA Keep, and I'm playing to this day. I'm on DAI, so I got multiple playthroughs going on. I'm not going to say anything else about them, but let's just say I'm focusing on the mages right now. So
Nice. Thanks for sharing. I tend to agree that like the depth of the lore in BioWare games is just outstanding, especially in Dragon Age and Mass Effect. And I just think they're unparalleled in that for sure. What about you, Austin?
I would agree with that. One thing that's interesting to me is actually starting the franchise with Dragon Age Inquisition, which I totally think you can do. Like, the game explains things fairly well to attract new players, but I just think I'm curious what that was like going back to the game into like Origins and DA2, who's they feel similar, but really do, like, in mechanics wise, feel like different games. And at least to me. So I'm curious, do you have, what was your experience with that?
Yeah, that was a huge changer. I mean, like I was used to the mechanics, the gameplay. You know, first of all, Mass Effect 3 was a shooter, kind of like a Gears of War kind of like shooter. And I I was sort of shocked by the change of the mechanics, the gameplay of the a little bit, I won't say archaic. I still love Origins and DA2. They are great games, despite how old they are. They still play up, and I feel like it would be. I mean, I'll get into the conversation later on, but like I feel like Origins in DA with DA2 and Dragon Age 1, I mean, excuse me, DA Inquisition would be probably a great hybrid if they created 4 like that. I mean, I especially love the warrior mechanics and DA Origins and the years that took place in DA2. And I don't know. I mean, it was an interesting change. And I kind of how I experienced Mass Effect 3 was the same way I experienced Dragon Age series. So it's kind of like an interesting um, backwards exploration of the lore. But yeah, I mean,
I definitely tend to agree that warrior is the best in Origins. I just think it's the most fun there for some reason.
I would agree with that. Warrior gets a little boring for me in Dragon Age Inquisition. Though I did really enjoy my two-handed Templar build a lot in Inquisition.
Yeah.
But there's something about, like, I just feel in Warrior, in DAI, it's like your only option is to be tanky. You can do some DPS, but not like you can in Origins. In Origins, you really feel like a master of combat. So yeah.
True. That's true. I especially like, I don't remember which warrior build it is, but in my warrior build, there was like a combination, I think, of 2 abilities, or maybe it was just one ability, where basically it's sword and shield, and you can basically just like bump your opponent like 1, 2, 3 or 4 times with the shield right in the face. And for some reason, that was just always super satisfying to me.
I have to agree too, Shelby. The warrior in Origins was awesome. I really liked my I think I played 2 warriors with the dual sword and like either a mace or a long sword and a dagger. And some of the ending killing scenes were just like, wow, that's amazing for a game made like more than, I don't know, what, 15 plus years ago.
So true. I think it's like 13 now. It came out in 2009, right, Austin? Is that right?
Yeah. I believe so.
So 13. Yeah, it's pretty impressive that it still holds up, though. I will say, I definitely want them to remake it or remaster it in some way for sure.
Yeah, I hope that happens really quickly. I think this is a good point to bring us to another question, and that's like, we all really like Dragon Age and Dragon Age Origins. Both Shikub and I started our Dragon Age journey with Dragon Age Origins. So I was curious, Derek, if you had a favorite origin or a favorite starting point in Dragon Age Origin.
Well, my very, very first experience was with the mages, and I beat every game, all 3 of the games, as a mage. So that's kind of saying something. But I have to go back and say that the warrior in Origins was again a great experience. Like, I think the one that I submitted in the Discord was of a elven warrior who ended up being a martyr, and that was a great experience. Like, she was a real badass. I and I kind of had her as as an elf, downtrodden, even throughout wherever she went throughout Ferelden, she was just downtrodden and looked down upon, and even that until she became the hero of Ferelden, which was a really amazing experience. Another great playthrough that I just recently completed, plus the Awakening DLC, was the Kuzlin, and that was another great one. I think I had my warden also use a dual weapon. I don't know. I really like the warrior with a dual weapon. And then I just go back to the mage just because of their downtrodden and feared. They're downtrodden and feared, but they have unbelievable power, and that's just something that I really liked in the game, and I hope they play upon that again in the more games.
I totally agree. I love the Kuzland origin. That one was not my first or my canon playthrough. I tend to be an elf simp. We all know this. But my very first origin playthrough was with a Dalish elf, which is not my favorite, actually. My second playthrough was with a city elf, which is my favorite. I loved that playthrough so much. She was a warrior. She romanced Zevran. And I just feel like all of those things really lined up perfectly, like with the story. I think the city elf and Zevran romance makes total sense. They're very similar upbringings. And the city elf origin is really dark, actually, especially if you're a female city elf. But it just really illuminates the point of how much depth BioWare puts into its writing, and just like lore development and character development, but also like really making sure that the place that you're in feels like a real place, like the Denerim city, but also the alienage, like really feels very fleshed out. And I don't know if all of the origins feel that way. And I guess I haven't done them all, so I can't say for sure. But yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the city elf. I think that for me, there are 3 origins that are my favorite, and I think they're what I would recommend for someone entering the series to get a good grip on like what's going on in the big issues of the Dragon Age series. And that's the city elf, the Dalish elf, and the mage origins. I think that they provide a good scope of the conflicts that surround Thedas, around with the mage, introducing you to the Mage Templar conflict, and then city elves, how elves are treated in human cities, and then the Dalish elf and their whole struggle. And so I tend to view those kind of as my favorite, and I think that they're the most fleshed out with conflict. Not that the Kuzlin isn't, because it obviously have like you make an enemy of Hal like right away, and that happens too. But that also happens in the city elf. And so I don't know. What do you feel?
I disagree with you. I think if I was going to tell someone the first 3 playthroughs, or like the top playthroughs or whatever that make most sense, I would say City Elf, Kuzland, and Mage, because I don't really think there's much you can learn about the Dalish and like their culture and what the Dalish elves mean to the lore. And like, there's nothing you can learn about all that stuff in the origin that you can't also learn in the Brazilian Forest quest line.
That's true.
So I think I would add Kuzlin because it does really give you an interesting look into like Freldon nobility and royalty that you just don't get otherwise. Like my first throughs, like I said, were elves, and then my third was Kuzlin. And so appreciate the hatred of Hal as much as I should have until I played the Kuzlin playthrough. Which, you know, he's just the worst, the absolute worst. And he's also voiced by Tim Curry. I don't know if anybody knew that. But yeah, so I think the Kuzlin also works really well with either the Alistair or the Liliana romances. And I think the Kuzlin origin is like the stereotypical like hero. So I think it's a good one.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. That's just what I think. And I was thinking mainly in like understanding the conflicts going forward to the other games as well, not just what's going on in Dragon Age Origins.
Yeah, I hear that. I was just thinking specifically of Origins, but I totally get that perspective too.
I also we would be remiss to not mention the Dwarven Origins. I don't know if you've done them, Derek, but I know She-Cup hasn't gotten around to them. And so they are definitely something if you want something different than your ordinary Dragon Age experience. But I really like those as well.
Yeah, I've tried the both Dwarven Origins, and it definitely is a different take of what you would expect from dwarves from other fantasy settings, like let's just say The Witcher or Lord of the Rings. And it's certainly its own world, and it is good. I would say it's a good introduction to the Dragon Age universe as well, but I can't really attest to it being like, because I haven't played it through as like my top origin story. So yeah, Mage and Kuzlin would probably be mine, just as to introduce to anybody to start playing these games. Would be my advice.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think also though the castless dwarf origin works really well with a Morrigan romance because they are kind of the same like archetype of characters, like both very like grew up on the fringes or outside of society, outcast, looked down upon characters. So I think they work really well together as a romance. But I will stop comparing all the romances because this is not the Two Girls One Ship podcast.
And so before we move on to our other question, sorry, I'm throwing in new questions just because I'm thinking of them. But Derek, do you have a favorite game? And we'll just go through your favorite. We kind of talked about your favorite origin, your favorite class, but do you have a favorite character, your companion? You can pick one from each game, or you could pick one overall. I'm just curious what you think.
So, Austin, is this a dream team crew or just one person that I can pick from all three? Like,
my instinct is yes, answer all for all of that. Dream team. We could start with dream team because I don't think She-Cup and I have answered that question before. So yeah, what would your dream team like party be going out?
All right, well, you need a warrior, so let's just go with the Iron Bull. I need my rogue, so I might have to settle. That's a hard one. Sigrun or Sarah. And then you need a mage. So I'll have to go with Meryl.
That's a good one. And I guess who would be your leader? Would you pair them with the Warden, with Hawk, or with your Inquisitor?
That's a good question. Like I like my I really like my Warden. I think my champion.
Yeah. Well, for me, I would definitely pick the champion. And this is why I definitely would pick the champion, because I think out of all the protagonists, Hawk is the one who I feel like understands to do what it takes to get results to happen. And I think that Hawk is the one who's going to be pushed to just do what needs to be done. Whereas, and then so for a party with that, for a rogue, I would have to go with Varric, but I want DA2 build Varric, not Inquisition build Varric. And then warrior, my Hawk is a rogue, so archery rogue. So warrior, I'm going to go more tanky. I'm either going to go with Blackwall or Aveline. And then for my mage, just support, I'm going to go with Win for support. I don't know. What do you think, Shelby?
I am laughing right now because like all of your picks were from Dragon Age 2, almost, except for Win.
I did Varric.
Oh, Win and Blackwall. Overwhelmingly DA2. Okay, so for my dream team, I'm gonna go with my Dragon Age Origins City Elf Warrior Flora, whom I love. And then I'm gonna do my second warrior is Cassandra, but specifically as a two-handed Reaver build Cassandra. Controversial, I know. And for my rogue, man, I'm torn on this one, but I think I would have to go with probably Isabella. And then for my mage, I would also have to go with Win, because she's just the best healer of all.
I would also, sorry, I would also have to say, like, I think with the mechanics, we'll just say, like, with DAO or DA2, with how it, where you're able to open up like hundreds of spells or skills, that would make the game amazing.
Yeah. So speaking of games, do you have a favorite game?
I'm leaning heavily on DAI just because that's when I was first introduced to it, but I really do like DA2.
It's no secret that Dragon Age 2 is my favorite game, and it still remains my favorite game, but I will say this, that after starting this podcast, Inquisition is rivaling DA2 for the game I've played the most.
Because it's so lore heavy?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just unparalleled in the lore. I tend to think that Origins is the arguably best game, but Inquisition is my comfort game. Like, Inquisition is the game that I come back to, and maybe it's because there's more romance options and more story choices that you can make differently. So I think it has a little bit more replayability. And also it's just a bigger game. So there's always something I haven't discovered yet. Although I think I'm nearing the end of things to discover in Inquisition. So that's the one I come back to the most, honestly.
Yeah. All right. So we all know that DA4 is supposedly coming. So let's just talk. What do we think is coming in Dragon Age 4? Derek, you can go forward. Like, any predictions, anything. You can also open this to things you're hopeful for going into DA4. Just really, like, what do you expect? What do you hope for?
Well, I'm hoping they return to the origin system that they have in DAO. Like, for example, since it's set in Northern Thedas, then maybe it could go like this, like Faction, Tevinter Imperium, Grey Wardens, Antivian Crows, and Canary. And from there, the players can choose their race, gender, and class. For example, if you choose a Tevinter, a lowly mage, thief, or a slave pressed into the military service. And, all these storylines can open up many options, that a player can choose just like in DAO, but it's going to be huge. And And the protagonist this time shouldn't be some chosen one, but like a nobody. Like, in the closest I can think of as a nobody main character would be like Geralt from The Witcher 3.
Yeah, I really, really love the idea of the nobody. I think that was one thing that Inquisition maybe suffered from a little bit, is like the herald can almost do no wrong. And so I would love to see a nobody who like makes a ton of mistakes, and like, if you choose the wrong thing, you get punished for it, right? I would also, this is just kind of my prediction. Like, I think that like the world war is coming to Thedas. Like, every faction, almost, we talk about this a lot in the show, that almost every faction or country is like coming to a civil war, or has already had a civil war, or is in some kind of major conflict with someone else. And I think that that's going to really be coming to a head in this new game, especially since we're in Tevinter. I also really want to see like fantastical magic representation. Like, Tevinter is supposed to be the mage's dreamland, right? Like, I want to see things done in magic that we've never seen before. I also want cities to really feel like cities. I didn't feel like Val Royeaux really felt like a city at all, not in the way that Kirkwall or Dinnerham did. So I really hope we get to go to Minrathous, and that it really feels like a dense, integrated, bustling kind of city. I would love that. And I don't really care about characters. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I want Fenris to come back, or oh, I want Fainriel to come back, or whoever else. I don't really care about that. Mine is more of like these other things I've just mentioned.
Yeah, I definitely think that returning to a more refined combat system is a big thing that I want. I don't think they'll fully go back to the Origins combat system, because the goal with Inquisition was to make it more accessible to people who haven't played RPGs. And I think that EA is going to push them to retain that. But I would love a system similar to Mass Effect Andromeda's combat system. As problematic as that game was, the ability to switch between loadouts in the game was awesome. And so that would give us the ability to have more skills and different skills for different environments. Like, that was one of the big things that always frustrated me about Inquisition, is you can only have 8 abilities. And I want them, I'm like, I want them all. And so I really want something like that. I think there are characters I want to come back. I know it's unlikely, but I'd love to see the Hawk sibling, if they're alive, come back in some kind of way. I do think Fenris is going to make a return. And but I'm with Shelby on this, is like, I want to see like what both makes Tevinter terrifying and Tevinter an appeal. I want more fleshed out about the country, because they're kind of like the boogeyman right now of, mage dictators. And there's a lot of that, but I just want more of that. And I want more of the Qun. I hope that some characters who've been kind of roughly ignored, like Sten, make a comeback in that. But yeah, I think I'm with you all. I want the more customizable origins. I think that would be a big help to the game.
I agree, but I also think Sten and Fenris are very, very likely to make comebacks, because in the comics, Sten is the Arishok right now. And as we know, Fenris is already in Tevinter from the comics, Blue Wraith specifically. So they are very, very likely to come back, I think. And I forgot 2 things. Number 1, how could I forget? Long hair. Please, for the love of God, for the love of all that's holy, I want long hair in the game. Long hair options, please. And just better hair overall. But my second thing is, I really, really want to be able to like jump and platform on everything. Assassin's Creed has ruined me.
I have to agree with you, Shelby. Like, I think ever since I started playing Assassin's Creed, pick which one, I've been jumping around trying to climb up mountains, rooftops, and I just want the perfect game. But I know they can't put every sort of system in each game. But yeah, let's have some key characters return. Like, we heard Varric possibly in like the trailer that was his voice, so he might be appearing. So who knows? And probably I doubt it, but Liliana. But who knows? I mean, she is a key character. It's like having Garrus in Mass Effect. But yeah, there's so many possibilities. Like, I'm just thinking of like, I doubt it, but let's have some more dogs back, like Mabari. Come on. And Griffins.
Yeah, I totally agree. I definitely want Mabaris to come back. And specifically, I would love it if Mabaris came back as they were in DA2, where it's a summonable unit and not necessarily like something that takes up like a party member slot. I don't necessarily think Liliana will come back just because of the codex note that we get in, I think it's a codex that we get at the end of Trespasser. If you've killed her in Origins and you played Inquisition, you get a codex that basically says that Liliana was a lyrium ghost, and that the lyrium sang her into being and let her be free and go back into the afterlife or whatever when she's not needed anymore. So I think that suggests she's not integral to the storyline anymore, unless of course she's divine.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if she's a lyrium ghost, what happens if you make her divine?
I don't think you get that codex. I don't know for sure because I've only made her divine once. No, twice. No, what? Anyway, I don't remember.
What if
I'm gonna put that out to the Discord?
What if she gets assassinated? Like, somebody attempts to assassinate her if she's a delirium ghost. That would be kind of an easy way to get away around that. I'm just saying.
That's true.
Also, either get rid of mounts or make them right.
Yes, 100%.
That's a big thing for me.
Because you're spoiled by Assassin's Creed Origins.
I mean, yeah, that's one of them, but also like every open world game does mounts better. I would also like new weapons, more than just the great sword, great axe, and bow, swords, daggers, and bows. Like I would love like have mages that can use swords, or a little more like hand crossbows, spears, other like throwing daggers, things like that. That would be interesting combat mechanics.
True. I want them to bring back the mage warrior. I forget what it's called from Origins. And two more things. I keep saying two things. I think they need to be a lot better about incorporating hair that is not just like white people hair. There's only, usually a couple options of like diverse hairstyles in all of the games. I think they definitely need to be better about that. But also eyebrows. Like, all of the eyebrows in Inquisition are terrible.
I also want unique villains. Like, I don't want them to bring back the architect or other like returning villains. Like, I know Solus is probably going to be something in there. We don't know, but like, I don't want just a rehash of what we've already done. Like, that was one of my biggest frustrations with Corypheus, is that, okay, I already killed you once. Like, how many times am I gonna have to kill you? And so I just want a new kind of like unique, I guess I would go for like a less mystical enemy, like a much more down to earth big bad, kind of like Meredith, but not as like hidden. Like you get Meredith as a big bad, but like she comes out and like, oh, now she's the boss fight. Like she's the real enemy of this game. Kind of hits you in Act 3, but like something more down to earth that is much more like actual people of Thetis than like, oh, here's this great mystical monster that's gonna undo the gods and undo the world.
Completely agree. We need a villain that is more believable, not a supernatural villain. It just drives the story better. No writer, but I feel that it just, you need a good villain to really push the protagonists throughout the whole story to make it believable. I mean, Logain is a very controversial character, but really he really moved the story more, I feel, in a way than the Blight did. And I mean, even though the Blight, Archdemon, and Origins was the final bad guy, Logain felt like a big baddie in the that than Origins. So I felt like he was more of an accomplishment defeating him than the Archdemon.
That is a really excellent point. And I totally agree with it. I think it could be interesting to have a Kunari big bad, just because I think that that's where a lot of the lore has been pointing, like the short stories into Winter Nights, for sure. I wonder what it would be like to go up against an old companion like Sten, if he is the enemy or joins the enemy or something like that. That would be interesting too.
Yeah, I'd also like a little more like fleshed out companions. I think one of the fallbacks of Dragon Age Inquisition and of Mass Effect is that none of your companions are really like, oh my gosh, like you suck. I mean, a little bit in Mass Effect, but it's all okay. Like, yeah, I may be a little skeptical of this, but yeah, I'm all in to follow you. And I would love to see like decisions that can result in your party betraying you, or other options like that just would make it more fleshed out and would make you go, what? When you're playing it. Yeah, I mean, the closest we get in Inquisition is Iron Bull. But yeah.
I mean, and Solus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to make my party mad at me. But also it's funny that you say you want people to betray you when like literally the apostate in every game betrays you. Like every single one.
Not Morrigan. Like she doesn't really betray you because she doesn't like do something that's really against you. She doesn't work against you. Solus, yes. Anders, yes. But Anders is like a conditional thing of like what you want. Depending on how you play your Hawk, Anders could do what you want.
But he does betray you in the end.
Right. And Morrigan does too, in a way, because she leaves you even when she's promised you that like you're her best friend and all this stuff. And I think that's especially heartbreaking for a male warden who's romanced her and has the baby. But I do think it's a form of betrayal. Not as black and white, of course, as the others, but
I also don't like, I know that people want this because they want the best ending or whatever, but I would be okay with an option of like, okay, you can't win over everybody. Like you're gonna have to choose between two companions. Or not always a way to reconcile everyone.
Yeah, like I feel like I almost lost Fenris my last playthrough, but I was amazed that he actually joined me in the end game.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in that.
Yeah, and it was pretty much I think the betrayal would be a more realistic addition to DA4. And I don't know. I mean, we got the possibility of an Antivan Crow faction, and maybe one of those guys, somebody turns out to be the big baddie within all along. I don't know. There's so many possibilities. I mean, they haven't really said anything about what the story is going to be even like. I mean, so who knows?
That's so true. At the end of last year, whenever they had the games convention, one of the things they had they had released a statement that said something like, we can't wait for 2022 when we can share more about DA4 with you. And we've learned nothing. And we're almost halfway through this year. So that's interesting to me. I hope we do get, some info soon, at least a name. And then we can start speculating a little bit more intensely, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree that. I just hope it's good. That's my biggest thing now. Just wanting it to be good, wanting it to be a good game that they put thought into. I don't want it to be rushed, which is why, like, if it's announced delayed, I don't really care how long it takes as long as it's good.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, we've seen this. I'm not going to say any titles, but we've seen this in some titles that were hyped up so much and rushed, and they were bad. I mean, and I agree with you, Austin. Like, this game, if it's announced around early 2004 or in 2023, I'm fine. But I'll be very worried if it's announced later this year. And, frankly, I want them to take as long as they need to really polish it up and make it look good, feel good, and just be a masterpiece. And it takes a while. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're probably working on the new computer system, the new entertainment systems like Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, excuse me. And it must be. I don't know anything about gaming construction, but it must be a lot of work putting these things together. And I applaud BioWare or any dev company that does this, but we gotta be patient.
100% agree. Like, I will wait, not forever, but I will wait a significant amount of time if this game will be good. I won't complain at all. But I also think, and this goes beyond Dragon Age or BioWare for sure, I just think as gamers, people who enjoy video games, we really need to be patient with companies and give them a little bit more grace. I think it's easy to be frustrated because, like, we want to play a good game, but also we have to understand that the people who make games are under immense amounts of pressure from the companies that own them, or like the companies that own their company. And a lot of times, actually 100% of the time, it's not the people making the game whose fault it is. It's the people in power, the CEO or whomever, the investors that are pushing unreasonable deadlines. So I always think it's important to encourage those of us who play and consume video games to have patience and show grace to the developers.
I definitely agree. And I think that patience is really key here. And I think that if we show developers, and especially these overhead umbrella companies like EA, that we are willing to wait and we're not going to be mad that it takes long as it's good, this whole culture of like rushing a video game out to get will be lessened a little bit. If they don't think they're going to lose money on it, then they can take as much as they need.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think that's all of our questions, Austin, and we've chatted for almost an hour. So I don't think we have time to get into any other legit, like, actual content for lore wise.
Yeah, I think thanks for being here, Derek. And I just want to take this opportunity to highlight Derek is one of our First Enchanter patrons. And so if you want to come on the podcast and just talk about things about Dragon Age with us once a month, you can upgrade to that First Enchanter tier for $20 and come and join us. And I also want to say a thank you to all of our patrons, and that we do have a new patron. And thank you to Derek for being our First Enchanter patron. He is also one of our first 5, so he gets named on every episode of the show. Shelby, do you want to read the rest?
I sure can. Okay, our patrons are Lisa M, Genesis, Derek B, as you are here, Fletcher M, Zuba, and our newest patron is Jazza. Thanks for becoming our newest patron.
And we do have Heroes, Hawks, and Heralds to share, though because of time we won't do that this episode, but know that we haven't forgotten them. They are coming. We'll start back with that on next week's episode. All right. I think that's all we have. You have anything else, Shelby?
I do not.
Well, thank you, Derek, for being here, and thank you for listening to the Dragon Age Lorecast. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Dragon Age Lorecast. As always, you can find us on Twitter at DALorecast. If you have any lore questions, topics to unpack, or side character suggestions, email them to us at dalorecast@gmail.com. The Dragon Age Lorecast is a part of the Robots Radio Rocket Club. You can join the Robots Radio Network Discord by clicking the link in our episode description. If you enjoyed our show, we'd love it if you'd subscribe and give us a review. See you next time.
Hi, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Ariel.
And we're the hosts of the Legend of Zelda Lorecast, podcast about all things Legend of Zelda, from Errol to Zora.
And all the fun things in between.
If you're ready to dive deep and learn more about the Legend of Zelda lore and everything surrounding it, come join us on the Legend of Zelda Lorecast. You can find us on Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google, or wherever else you get your podcasts.
We hope to see you soon.